Well, we're all here to hear Francisca Saavedra present, but before she does, I'm just going to give a little bit of background. So thank you all for coming. My name is Bob Bushbacker. I'm with the TCD program. And the TCD program has a long history of working to integrate theory with practice, and especially we have an area of strength in community-based conservation. So we've been doing this for a long period of time. And particularly in 2018, we held a workshop called Tools and Strategies for Conservation and Development in the Amazon, Lessons Learned and Future Pathways. I have a couple of copies of this, and I'll leave one up here if you want to grab one when you leave, but if you want to pass this around, you're welcome to look at it. But out of that conference, a specific project emerged, and if you called two major themes that emerged were governance and infrastructure. And the project that we implemented from 28, you can leave it there, from 2018 to 2021 was called Governance and Infrastructure in the Amazon. And it was a learning network which is signified by this network diagram of 28 partner organizations that participated in this project. And there are one of the key things was that we integrated different kinds of knowledge and different kinds of organizations. So the circles here are NGOs, and the colors indicate the country. So NGOs from Peru, NGOs from Colombia, NGOs from Brazil, and then we also had academic organizations, universities in Bolivia, and grassroots and social organizations. So the INGA from Colombia, and all of these organizations, we created this learning network based on themes and regional groups. So we had a regional group in Brazil. You see those are the different kinds of organizations. They focused on a theme of legal action. Another focused on knowledge management in the upper Madeira basin of the Bolivia-Brazil border. Another group focused on indigenous training and intercultural collaboration in Colombia. And this Pan-Amazon group with members from all the different countries focused on communication and mobilization for impact. So this was a learning network project that ended in 2021. We have a website. One of the cool things about the project that we produced many products, and there's a list of about 50 products on our website, and most of them have counterparts in kind of an academic analysis and a community useful tool, like with infographics or different kinds of language. So these products were co-produced and shared and meant to be useful and in formats that could be useful for these community organizations. Okay, and another really cool thing about this project illustrated here is how it was implemented by the University of Florida. So these blue circles are the virtual working groups that we carried out in part with groups of partners from outside of UF, but these are all the people from within UF. We had students, we had faculty, several of them over here, Steve, Marianne. We had a couple of coordinators, Andrea Chavez and myself, and Andrea is also a co-producer of this presentation, but unfortunately she's traveling, she couldn't be here. We had some postdocs. So we worked as a virtual network and learned from each other within TCD and with partners. Okay, so that was a 3-year experience. We had some main findings about infrastructure and governance in the Amazon. One of them was that grassroots organizations who don't work on their own, they work with partners, but they were statistically more likely to have an impact on governance and infrastructure than other types of organizations. So it's really important to include them as key actors. And key strategies that were impactful in terms of controlling or managing infrastructure and governance had to do with political action and negotiation. And the other thing was that the grassroots leaders were very engaged with this project. So it was really their insight and co-learning that was really one of the things that stood out. But we also heard from them and documented that how you work with them is really important. So specific, and in fact, directly focused on power. how you allocate power, about knowledge, about how you organize interactions, how your action and agenda is set. So we learned and documented really how the power relations, even among allies, is important. Of course, we knew our relations with dam companies or governments is really important, but even between NGOs, universities, and grassroots organizations, they really emphasized how you interact and how you collaborate. Not just that you're there and automatically it's kumbaya. You really have to work on how you work together. And so we tried to develop a new phase of GIA back into 2021. And this is a progress report. Okay, so we started by forming a working group of those partners, emphasizing the grassroots organizations and the NGOs and universities who work very closely with them, because we learned how important they are for infrastructure governance. And they told us they want to be protagonists of a new project, not beneficiaries. We asked them to help us design UF's future project, and they really turned around and said, you help us design our future project that we want to implement. And we did that. And we had this conference, February 2022, where we developed a project concept and a funding proposal that they unfortunately have not been able to sell to donors yet, but it's still a live proposal that this is a concept. It's not actually a project, doesn't have a budget, it doesn't have actually details about who would implement it, but it leaves clear that these organizations would be the protagonists and lead, and this is what they want to do and how they envision it. And so it's a concept, and we realized that this concept is best, in terms of academic terms, characterized as the concept that they presented to us at this conference, and you can see it in this video, is best called biocultural conservation. Okay, so that's bringing us to where we are today. And one of the things that donors told us is, well, what are you doing facilitating these organizations and developing projects, and you're not a project administrator, et cetera. You really need to define the university's role. We heard that from the Moore Foundation, and we heard that from the Ford Foundation. The university can be a powerful player in supporting these organizations. Ford Foundation was very interested in that. But the project that we articulated with partners didn't really discuss its particular role for University of Florida. So that's the project that we're doing now. And in fact, Sinamar and Andre and I, we presented on the Tropilunch here in January. And so this is kind of a progress report. And we're working towards 4 products. And basically, Francisca's presentation is going to be about one of these projects, but just a little bit of background first. The first product is a concept paper about how we understand what is biocultural conservation. Based on a literature review, a group of students working on this together, and basically found 2 key concepts that need to be incorporated in biocultural conservation: the interdependence of biological and cultural diversity. Effective conservation requires integrated conservation strategies across biophysical and cultural realms. Think about knowledge, spirituality, and language. And indigenous or community agency and empowerment. Or community, because I think a lot of what we're learning is focused on indigenous, but is relevant to other traditional populations and people who have rights to territory and a sense of place. So I think this is a little bit broader than indigenous, but the literature talks mostly about indigenous agency and empowerment. So local communities with sovereign territory and a strong sense of identity, place, and social integration are the key protagonists of biocultural conservation. So that comes from this literature. It also comes from our findings in GIA project. So that's product 1. Product 2, we have a student working group doing a literature review of 72 recent papers. Sinamar is leading this, and Nestle is working on it. Sylvia, Laura, and how to implement biocultural conservation, what the literature tells us about actually how you put this into practice. And we're still working on that, but we identified 5 emergent themes. And again, indigenous empowerment and agency comes up very strongly, but also the idea of collaboration and partnership so they can be supported, knowledge, rights and governance, and territorial resource or species management. So there's a lot of nuance here that we're working on articulating and really understanding a little bit better. But just that's the second of 4 products. And the last 2 products, and now is my handing it off to Francisca, has to do with the role of academia and then what are the opportunities and future actions for TCB. Okay, so a little bit of background about how we got here and what biocultural conservation is and how to implement it on the ground. And now back to the key question that we were challenged to answer and to think about our own opportunities of future action is really a more general view of what is the role of academia. So I'm going to stop sharing if I can, and then pass it on to Sylvia, who's going to introduce Francisca.
Yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Ready. Okay, good afternoon. I am nervous. I wanted to tell you that first, but I also wanted to tell you that this is a real honor to be with you and share some of the stories and insights I gained exploring the field of biocultural conservation in higher education. I did this through reading and mainly
Francisca, I'm sorry, that we can see your notes. Do you want to turn them off?
The transcript.
The transcriptions?
I didn't know how to do it, so that's why they're there.
No. Oh.
Are they annoying?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's more caption.
Yeah.
I don't
Off, like caption settings.
Here?
Caption settings.
Caption.
Like off.
Where is it?
Works really well.
Apparently.
It might help people, I guess, because I do have an accent. So I think sometimes it may help for those that don't understand me.
And then like show captions.
But I don't know how to take it.
Click down the menu, maybe there's a.
Here? No. Okay, that's okay.
It's okay.
I think we have to live with it. I couldn't do it either.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. This adventure, I would say, of doing this work, it was really an adventure and a fantastic intellectual adventure. And I am very enthusiastic, if not passionate, about the work with it, with Andrea and Bob. I think I need to explain the title. It starts, Let's Talk Story. Have you ever heard that title, that expression before? Any of you?
No.
Nope, me neither, until I talked to Dr. Christopher Dunn in Cornell, who used it. It is an expression used in Hawaii that people use in Hawaii to have conversations, to get to know each other. And it's an expression that he used when he explained the role of universities this day, the need that universities have to talk stories, to reach out to indigenous leaders and ask them to sit down and talk and talk and talk again and build relationship of trust. Stories are also very moving. So that's another power of story. Okay, can you see this? This is Robin Walkimer, and I wanted to show her, although I didn't interview her, I knew about her. And she is the inspiration for my interest in biocultural conservation. I entered this field not knowing much, and Suzuki, the Zen monk, calls this beginner's mind. Robin Walkimer is a very prominent figure in this country, at least, and has made the field of biocultural conservation accessible to the public. She wrote the book Braiding Sweetgrass. How many of you have read that book? I cannot see you, but perhaps some voices. I see one voice left hand from Bob. So that's the only hand I can see. I can see the screen there, but I imagine some of you have read it. She is a MacArthur Fellow, a faculty at SUNY, and also an indigenous person and an exquisite storyteller. If you haven't heard her voice, I recommend you go to YouTube and listen to her voice telling stories. So Robin inspired me through stories. And this talk today is really not an academic talk. It's a talk that I have developed thinking in how do I also inspire you? How do I touch your heart and perhaps make you also enthusiastic to learn more about this field and to learn about the power of this field of biocultural conservation. Okay, next. So this is the report that was published this month. Beautiful. The image was created by an artist at the University of Maryland and Rick Vesio. And the questions on the right are the questions that oriented the work. Who is contributing to the field? What is needed in the field? What is the role of academia in biocultural conservation? So we documented best practices, we listened to the experts' insights, and to their insight into the future. Very exciting. And I haven't defined the term. So I invite you to think about this, to think about how important is the biocultural conservation. And this is your opinion. Without even defining it for you, I hope you know a little bit, if you don't need to know. See if you can answer this. This is my first time using this Menti, so hopefully it works. Is it working? Can you see? Can you go in there?
Yes.
One, super important. One vote. Going down. Okay. Keep on going a little bit more. Wow. Well, this is a very special group, obviously. So most of you see how this field is very important. Let me see, close this voting. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I guess we are on good terms here. Okay, so I love this definition. This definition is the definitions that Anna Porzinkansky gave me. Actually, it's not hers. Was shared with her by Eleanor Sterling. Anna works in the American Museum of Natural History, and she worked with Eleanor for many years. Sadly, she also passed early this year. But I love this definition. And what I like the best about this is that if you look at this at the beginning of the definition, biocultural approach to conservation is all about the process. So to me, that means it's all about the how. It's not about what many view as sort of the great challenges. My concern with climate change is not about biocultural conservation or climate change. It's about how we go about dealing with the problems that are very important this year, climate change, biodiversity loss, etc., etc. So I think biocultural conservation is an approach to conservation that's grounded in local culture practices and need, and shows us how we go about doing conservation. How do we do this? Okay. Nice map. And these are the people I interview. They're all over the map, but not all over the map. We selected 27 programs, and then we gave priority for interviews to those organizations that are mainly universities that were doing research or training for graduate students in biocultural conservation, and some NGOs that either were very important in the field or had some sort of linkage to universities. What do you notice in that map? What is sort of striking? That's why I used the map. I heard voice. The people in the audience can scream, I guess.
US.
US, okay. So it's mostly not only US, it's US and Canada, okay? This and it's because of the search I did. I did use English words, so most likely we'll find people that use the term in English, biocultural conservation, and also the people that were recommended by TCD, which also are many of them were in the US. What else do you notice?
Se non funziona, non penso.
I don't hear, but so I think I will say continue with what one of you said. They are mostly in the northern part of the States and Canada. Dr. Maffey is in Canada, Dr. David Sandleff is in Canada, Dr. Musa is in Canada. And we have those mainly there in Canada, but have a few exceptions. We have also Hawaii here. Dr. Gavin in Colorado and Simone in Florida. Simone is the former TCD student, by the way. Okay, let's start. So those are the faces of the people I interviewed. And this is Dr. Luisa Maffey. She is one of the pioneers in the field of biocultural conservation and the co-founder of Terralingua. Terralingua is an NGO based in Canada and in the States, whose mission is to mainly an educational mission, I will say, not only, but so I wanted to talk about her because in selecting the people for the interview for the report, I skipped her. Given what I know now, I should have selected her and given her priority for interview analysis. So I did after the report was written, and it was great. So I will show you a little snippets about her and others, about the things I learned, the stories they told me. The concept of biocultural diversity, by the way, was the result of conversations between Dr. Luisa Maffey, and she's an anthropologist and linguistic, with the biologist Dr. David Harman in 1995. And these conversations gave rise to Terralingua and to a conference in 1996 that really started the field of biocultural diversity. So that's 25 years or so ago, more. Let's go to the next one. And biocultural conservation is more and more in the forefront. And Luisa told me when we talked that the idea of biocultural diversity, biocultural conservation was very queer in 1995, but now it's very different. And this is an example. She said that Canada, for example, has now what they call the IPCAs, and it's their Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas. And this is a very innovative and wonderful way to protect areas. And they are, by default, led by Indigenous people. And they are, in general, represent also a long commitment to conservation, because Indigenous people don't think about only one generation. They think in multi-generational times, the 7-generation concept. And at the same time, they elevate Indigenous rights and responsibility. The picture there is from a Canadian NGO, Conservation and Reconciliation, Conservation for Reconciliation Partnership. And you can read a bit more about that there. So this is a movement right now, and not only in Canada, in many other countries, in this one too, in the United States. And Luisa emphasized that this Indigenous movement needs the support from all well-meaning beings and organizations, and among them needs the support from universities. She thinks that this work starts in education and research institutions, and it starts with inter and transdisciplinary approaches to teaching and learning. A lot of what Bob and I and Andrea and others are working right now. And I wanted to share this because Christopher Dunn told in one of in the interview this from Cornell, the importance of arts. And when talking to Luisa, she shared with me this most incredible vision for the new university, University of the Future. And there is an artist working on this. So this what you see right now is not what she said, it's my attempt to try to explain her vision. So I'm going to read what she said, and close your eyes because I find it so beautiful. Somehow this vision formed in my mind, the new university. And what I saw and expressed to my colleagues who were sitting there was this idea. First of all, it was not made out of a bunch of square buildings. It's just one big circular building. And there are no departments, but there are kinds of hubs, and you move and you have to circulate around like you know in ancient Greece, the followers of Aristotle who walk, who teaching and learning, who taught and learned while walking. So you have to constantly move around and absorb all the pieces of this big puzzle. Furthermore, they aren't really walls, the walls outside. They are almost like, you know, these tentacles that lead you into the society, into the real world. So the walls of academia have come down, and there is an intimate connection between academia and the real world. Oh, I found this just incredible. And I'm really looking forward to see the depiction of this vision by the artist Ingrid here. Okay. Can't you imagine? Okay. Okay, let's continue with more stories. And this is Dr. Mike Gowan. He is one of the first ones I interviewed, and he's a faculty at the Colorado State University. He is one of the co-authors of this very famous paper of 2015, Defining Biocultural Approaches to Conservation. One of the co-authors is Dr. Richard Stepp, a faculty. You can see a little picture of him on the bottom, a member of the anthropology department and a TCD, on TCD at the University of Florida. This is one of the most cited papers in biocultural conservation. Dr. Gavin Whitehall is a very clear thinker and speaker. If you have a chance, listen to his TED Talk. It was really, really nice talking to him. And also because he was one of the first one, I didn't record it. So I had to really stop after the interview and write my notes and try to remember everything he said. But one of the concepts that impressed me the most in our conversation is the one in the quote. The role of academia is to establish collaborations with NGOs, organizations, and communities to change the paradigm of biodiversity conservation. And we don't have time for this, but I would like you to take notes there for conversations with your friends and write and think about what is the current paradigm in conservation and what is this new paradigm that Dr. Gavin is referring to. More stories. And on the bottom, you see Dr. Anna Porzykanski. Anna is the director for the Center of Biodiversity and Conservation at the American Museum of Natural History. Although she did not get her degree at TCD, she grew up close to TCD because of her parents are TCD faculty. She was very generous with her time and a super ally in this project, and an example of the power of networking. When I talked to her, she introduced me to the late Dr. Eleanor Sterling, and how her work and approach has affected the work that is happening at the American Museum of Natural History. Dr. Sterling was at the museum for more than 20 years until 2021. Then she moved to the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology at the University of Hawaii. As I said before, we lost her early this year. But her influence, and this is what Anna was very good at sharing, her influence can be seen very heavily still at the American Museum of Natural History. And most significantly, in the number of people she mentored. Anna was one of her mentees. Rachel Dax, who I interviewed later at Hawaii, is another mentee. Chris Filardi, another mentee, and many, many others. And in my conversations with Anna, this is the sentence, at least, that I will remember the most, and I still use it and think about it. Learn to move at the speed of trust. And this is what she answered when I asked her about the challenges in the field of bioculture and conservation. Think about it. And you can try to answer if you have a voice there. What is the speed of trust to build relationships when you work in the field? You can perhaps share in the chat on screen there in the room. Next time I will go to Florida and give a talk there. What is the speed of trust? Any guesses to build trust? I see one voice. Bob, I cannot get to the chat. Perhaps you can tell me.
Yeah, one of the comments are from Carolina, and she says, like, trust. Let me see it again. Trust that we are nature.
Mm-hmm. And how many years will it take to build trust in the community, for example? Okay. So I want to share you one example, and this is one case study. I interviewed Steve Canty informally. He's a friend at the Smithsonian who worked for many years in communities of fishermen in the Caribbean. He said that after 10 years of talking about marine reserve to a group of people in the area, they knocked at his door while he was having dinner. They said, "We want that you were talking about." What? He said. "Do you mean a marine reserve?" "Yes, we do. We do want that." And he stopped eating and went back to work. It took 10 years for this community to trust him on what he was talking about, what he was proposing to them. So it takes time. Okay, how is the time? I'm gonna pass this time. So this is Rachel Dax, who I interview after interview, and Anna, and again, the power of networking. Rachel is currently, I believe, a postdoc at the Hawaiian Institute of Marine Biology. She's will be faculty and assistant faculty in 2024. And she worked very close with Eleanor Sterling too. And shared with me a wealth of information about the University of Hawaii and the many initiatives in biocultural conservation. I just want to say that our team knew that Hawaii and the University of Hawaii was an important leader in the field. It was just hard to find someone that could talk to us. And here are some of the insights or some of the initiatives that are happening in Hawaii. The Bioculture Initiative of the Pacific is one of them that unites or brings together faculty and students interested in biocultural conservation. And because there are many people interested in working in biocultural conservation, but are all spread out throughout the university. This initiative, by the way, was led by Dr. Christopher Dunn when he was in Hawaii. The Hawaii has also the initiative to become a native Hawaiian place of learning. And this is an initiative that from 1886 has percolated in many ways throughout the university. For example, Rachel teaches a course for marine biologists, a 2-week course for incoming students, and she teaches them about place-based methodologies in Hawaii. She said it's really a course that shakes students to the core. And these are students not necessarily working in biocultural conservation, the students that will work in Hawaii. This is a publication I found it in the report that I found it very inspiring. Hawaiian Renaissance that could save the world. This is it was written for the public in the American Scientist by Sam Ohugon from the Nature Conservancy and Dr. Kawika Winter there in the lower right. He's at the University of Hawaii. I interviewed him after the report was written. And what I found amazing about the story is the power of a location, that the university is located in a place in Hawaii where there is a renaissance, where people are going back to their roots and reclaiming their culture. And so the two things are going together. Hawaii and the University of Hawaii are leading in many ways the efforts in biocultural conservation. Again, it's not the only place, but it's a really great example. How much time do I have? Perhaps I can skip this one. Dr. Christopher Dunn there in the bottom is now in the Cornell Botanic Garden. And he was very friendly. He accepted my invitation to talk right away and gave me a lot of time too. And he's the one who was very adamant is perhaps not the word, very enthusiastic or very clear about the role of the arts in the field of biocultural conservation as a way to inspire. And he shared also about the role of academia moving forward. And he really believes that universities have a very powerful voice that they ought to use to move change, to trigger change. And he talked about the role of land-grant universities like Cornell, their need to grapple with the history of occupation and disposition of Native American land by being beneficiaries of the Murray Act. and the need to come into terms with this history of occupation and find ways to reconcile and restitute. He also introduced me to Dr. Karim Ali Kassam, who I interviewed after the report was written. And Dr. Kassam is doing a marvelous work in biocultural conservation nationally, internationally. And he has also very profound insights into education. If you are curious, look at his website. And he is, for me, a great example of how biocultural approach can be used to address climate change. He is, and this is my humble opinion, a very wise soul. I was very impressed after talking to him. And okay, we're coming close to the end. I have the last two programs. I left them at the end, not because they were less important, because they great examples and inspiration of how to operationalize, how to put bioconservation in practice and to see their power. So on the upper right, you see Dr. Faisal Mullah. Yeah, we had a fascinating conversation, and I'm just going to show you a little bit of that. He wrote in a recent paper with Jessica Lukawecki how biocultural conservation has emerged but has not been really operationalized yet. I believe that the work that he is doing is to try to see how can this be bring down to earth. And I will mention two initiatives with him. One is the curriculum of the Masters of Conservation Leadership that he's part of, that, for example, include, among others, indigenous leaders in the teaching role. So there is this exchange in both ways. And here on the bottom, you can see him here in the bottom. He's co-leading the NGO Conservation Through Reconciliation Partnership. And he's co-leading with 5 indigenous people and 2 university-based academics. This to me is a great example of co-leading, is letting go of power and bringing these different views and different ways of knowing really in a leadership position. Okay, and the Field Museum. We were very curious about the Field Museum. Some of us, I didn't really know, knew that a lot of work in biocultural conservation was happening there. I can find nothing just searching around in the website. The website is really hard to navigate. So I interviewed Tita, also a connection through Anna Persica. She's in the lower left. Tita is amazing. She just has so much energy, and she's just so fun talking to her. She is now in Legado, but worked for 10 or more years at the Field Museum. In the summer, after the report, I also was able to talk to Dr. Paula Unger and Dr. Corinne Wissendorf in the field, and I understand a lot better now what their work is. I'm going to share a little bit here. So the museum, this is what Corinne told me in the summer. The museum said had their mission, the initial mission was to explore the earth and its people. She said they started as a really colonial and a little bit big. At that moment, they say, but wait a minute, what are we doing for the well-being of the earth and its people? So they started this very small conservation effort, which initially was made of a small group of biologists. They have been doing RAPs for Conservation International, and they included in their version the social scientists. So the team was made of biologists and social scientists. Tita was part of that team as a social scientist. And this rapid biological and social inventories are very much grounded in a bioculture approach. And the next slide is, I hope you can see how powerful this can be. This is the page that you cannot find very easily, but it's in the report, the link to this page. This is the rapid biological social inventories. They've been going for 22 years, and look how much area it has been conserved. Tremendous amount, tremendous. It shows how powerful this approach is. And here you see pieces of an article written in the New York Times that highlights the creation of one national park, the Yawas National Park, and it's incredible, just incredible. And if you look at the maps and the amount of area that's been bring in some to create conservation areas or have some degree of protection is huge. This is one of the examples, a result of those of their work. And here we have Simone Adair, also a TCD, a former TCD student. She's now the faculty of the Florida International University, 2.5 hours away from you, if you are in Gainesville. She and her team received a grant from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundations. I know they're collaborating with a few museums to advance the protection of the transboundary biocultural riverscape in Western Amazon. So the field that started with Louisa Maffei in a conference in 1996 has the potential, I think, to expand during this time a lot more. And what Simone says here is we need to promote interdisciplinary opportunities for connection. And it is our hope, my hope, that TCD would do that. And one of the new initiatives to do it is this new biocultural panel series that we hope will continue to engage with the leaders that we interview and faculty and students at University of Florida. So, and this is about where I'm going to finish here. These are the two panels. They're more or less down. The first one is certainly happening, the December 1st for Dr. Faisal Mullah will come to Gainesville and talk to you to the role of biocultural education in supporting indigenous-led conservation. And in March next year, we will have Dr. David Sandleff, likely March 29, talk about curriculum and biocultural conservation. And we also hope to have either one, the Field Museum and the American Museum of Natural History. And that will be it, I think. Oh, no, this is big. There is a list of people here that I'm extremely grateful for supporting this work and for the time and dedication to the field and for giving me so much time in between interviews and emails. And I will leave the last one because I like it. It's very simple. Biocultural conservation with the people and for the people. That's TITA. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.